Greetings and welcome to the premiere of Moving Mindset Mondays. I am your host, Coach Brooks, and I want to ask you a question. Do you feel like giving up? Are you thinking about throwing in the towel and letting it go? Well, don't. There are people out there who have walked in our shoes and worse, yet have overcome some of the most tremendous trials out there, and while keeping their faith in God, are now rising to some of the most phenomenal heights and transforming the lives of other people. Our guest today, Dr. Latarja Holden, is truth of this proof. She has went from being homeless with 6 kids and a high school dropout to earning her doctorate and 2020 National and Georgia Mother of the Year. We are honored to have such a phenomenal testimony of what you can overcome when you keep believing and you keep working. So without further ado, Dr. Latarja Holden.
Hi.
Hey, Doctor, I'm super excited to have you on board today. I think your story is the best person to have right now to be able to launch this premiere of Moving Mindset Mondays. And I want you to take us from where you started. Take us from that devastating dark time in your life way back when, and walk us all the way through to your success, where God has allowed you to go and the things that He's allowed you to do in this season right now.
Oh my goodness. Well, I want to thank you again, Coach, for having me. A lot of times
Absolutely.
I'm big on self-reflection. When I look back over the last 13, 14 years, I honestly, it's almost unbelievable even for me. After a 10-year marriage ended, abusive marriage ended, it just left me a shell of a person. To be 35 with a GED, homeless. I was a stay-at-home mom, so I had very little work history. In the streets of Atlanta, it was hard. And I think the rejection from those that were close to me probably made. It's one thing when you have a support system, but when you don't and you're facing these trials, I didn't know God. I wasn't raised in the church, so for me, and a lot of times people when they're going through, they can numb their pain with alcohol and drugs. I didn't do
Right.
drugs, so for me, it was straight. I'm faced with homelessness with my kids, and at that time I had my older 2 sons was in high school, my 2 daughters in middle school, and then my son and daughter was in elementary school. um Statistically, there was no way. The odds were just stacked us against us, but I just knew I had to at least try. Coach, I didn't really know. I'm just gonna be honest, I really did not know how the heck I was gonna come out of this. I didn't know. When that marriage ended, I was a shell of a person. I didn't even know who I was. And
So let me ask you, what was going through your mind? How were you feeling when you knew that you had to take your kids and literally sleep out on the street? What was going through your head at that time?
oh, failure, humiliation. My nieces was taunting my children, because they didn't go through the struggle, so my kids are feeling humiliated. So that just added double to how I was feeling, So, and when I say homeless, and we was homeless for 4 years, so we talking about abandoned houses, squatters, sleeping in cars, scraping up money for hotels, living in a shelter. Every now and then, one of my sisters will let me come for a month and a half, stay with her. Um, I,
How long were you homeless? How long did it take? What was the length of you being homeless?
it was actually 4 years,
Wow.
and that time I'm pushing. Oh my gosh. A lot of time when I'm doing these interviews, people just like you said, I'm glad we think of the accomplishments, they just don't know.
Right.
Had God not step in, there was no way.
Right.
To be 35, I'm not any part of any elite groups. I'm not part of any sororities. I don't even know anyone that is well known. So here I am coming from literally a high school dropout. I had 4 kids by the time I was 22. And now I'm 35, homeless with a GED. So usually in that age, you kind of pretty much set for the most part, unless God come in and you start. Man, the more I just sit back, but I just knew when I found myself living in that boarded up house,
For a lot of people, just hearing that you didn't know God, I mean, you wasn't raised in church. I mean, what was that interaction like? I mean, how did you get to a place of saying, I'm gonna trust God and be able to come out of this situation?
Oh, that didn't come in the beginning because I didn't, I was trying to
Right.
cry and plead my way out of this thing with God. I was whoever he was at that time. I was, hey, I was, because when you got people treating homelessness and had a poverty mindset, a scarcity mindset. So now I'm homeless, uneducated with a poverty mindset. I have no work skills. So for me, I just knew I made a vow that the streets was not going to raise my 6 children, nor the jails was going to house them. Now, to be honest with you, Coach, I really didn't know what I was doing. I made that vow. I just knew I had 12 eyes watching me. And God,
Yeah. I mean,
12 eyes.
I can imagine. I mean, I experienced homelessness too, so it's a pretty tough road to travel. But, given the fact that, you had 12 kids watching, I mean, how did you deal with knowing your kids are watching you literally take them through, homelessness, nowhere to sleep, no video games, no TVs, just living out there, trying to make ends meet, trying to survive.
Well, they was embarrassed. They was embarrassed. I mean, they wanted stuff, and this what I did in the beginning. Before we got into so 4 years homeless, before we started getting to year 3 and 4, I started thinking about legacy and suicide. I didn't have nothing to leave my kids. I didn't have, and I knew my children wanted material stuff, but I didn't have it. So I came to them about 13 years ago. I have the newspaper articles, and I just told them, I said, look, I don't have anything to give you guys materially. All I have is to love you unconditionally, and I want to teach you how to serve. I'm a servant leader, so I'm like, that was a humiliating moment. That was a humbling moment because I'm giving my 6 children the only thing that I have as a servant leader. And I said, I want to teach you guys how to serve. And they was like, what are you talking about? We don't have anything. How can we help somebody else? I said, I know it, but I believe if I could teach you guys how to give back now when we don't have anything, I've given you a strong foundation to build on, become great leaders. And I tell you, although they mumbled and complained, they helped me set up the events. I did about 4 or 5 events around the Hurricane Katrina time. And I just, after giving them the only key that I possess, to my surprise, by the grace of God, they came to me one by one as they started matriculate through high school and got older. Mother, my oldest son, he'll be 32 next month. He said, Mother, by what you showed me about serving, my way of giving back is joining the United States Marine Corps. He served 10 and a half years in the Marine Corps. He's medically retired, and he's about to graduate this month with associates in accounting. Another son became a caretaker. My oldest daughter said her way of giving back is going to the medical field. She's an EMT, a licensed pharmacy tech, and she's a senior in college. Another daughter said, Mom, my way of giving back by what you showed me is going into the human service field. She graduated last year with her bachelor's in liberal studies, and she joined the United States Army 3 years ago. My 19-year-old daughter is now four-time published author, youth speaker, um, entrepreneur. She just launched her first tabletop game for children. And my last child, Omega. Omega is the last in the end, coach. There's no more coming after him. Omega is a senior in high school and a youth leader. For me, being a pastor, if God did nothing else for me, I believe I've done my job.
Wow. I mean, that's a powerful testimony. I mean, homeless with 6 kids, and every one of your kids now are living a life of service. I mean, I've looked at, we've talked, offline,
Yeah.
and, I looked at your website and different things. And, when your kids were, when they were in the younger stages and they looked at you and they saw, that you were continuing to press them, how did you deal with, the emotion of being able to look in your kid's eye and know that you can't give them other things that, things that they need, things that
Yeah.
they want?
Yeah.
How did you handle that?
Oh, now that's what a mental it got so hard. I remember one day walking to a hospital here in Riverdale, Georgia, And remember, I told you I was thinking of legacy and suicide. So I taught my 6 children the principles of servant leadership. But now here's the suicidal piece that come in, because I'm like, because as a pastor, I often pose the question, what happens when your struggle outlasts your strength? We all can go through some for a couple of days, weeks, maybe a couple of months, but what happens when it becomes years? And so I remember walking to the hospital here in Riverdale, Georgia. And I told her, when I went through those glass doors, I told the lady right there today, I said, ma'am, I can't do this anymore. And I knew I was probably looking frazzled and crazy. She said, ma'am, are you saying you want to commit suicide? I said, yes, I'm tired. I don't know what else to do. And they kept me for a week for observation in that hospital. And on that floor, they had a padded room. And I remember going to the lady at the desk. I said, ma'am, can I go into that room? She said, ma'am, you're no threat to anybody. I said, I know it, but I need to go in there. And coach, every day I was there for that week for observation. I just remember going in there once a day, dropping down to my knees, crying out, God, whoever you are you there? Please help me. I don't have anything. I'm scared and I'm lost. And when they released me from the hospital after a week for observation, my situation did not immediately turn around, but I knew something was different. And before I knew it, I had matriculated through college, my associate, my bachelor's, my MBA. But now when I got accepted to the PhD program, and I did want to bungee jump up to heaven and high five my man. I did. I wish there was a way I can go there and just, that was
I
never
think it
my.
was amazing. I mean, a lot of times, that's the contemplating suicide. That runs through a lot of our minds when we get to those dark places and we don't see any way out. But just constantly going to your knees and asking God to help you get through it, help you overcome it. Where were your kids at during that time? I mean, where were they when you were, being in observation?
I probably called my parents and them to go get them. And at that time was the 2 in high school, 2 in middle school. Um, that's one part I don't know. I'm being honest. I'm pretty sure my parents, or they was older enough where they can stay there, and watch themselves. But one thing my kids did, they saw me depressed, they saw me crying, they saw me, you know, feeling just I mean, like a failure. But one thing they did see me do is give up. And that was the thing. And I just remember when God brought us out of the homeless journey started to come to an end, I made a vow. I said, God, if you get me out of homelessness and hopelessness, I'll go back and fight for others. And that's how I ran for 20 that's how I became a political candidate in the 2017 election. So I went from being homeless and came into running for a city council. But I just knew that I had a moral duty after I liberated my family to at least go back and fight for the homeless community, a lack of affordable housing. Because I think we need, what the problem is, a lot of times we have people in position because they have titles or influence or affluence, but they don't have this personal experience to be able to touch the people where they are. And so I didn't win that seat, but I did very well for my first run. But when I go back and look at my pictures and I see my grandchildren, not only my children, but my grandchildren out there with their signs saying vote for my grandma, for me, that was a win.
Absolutely, absolutely. So now you got to the point where you've overcome your homelessness, and God made a way to come out of the situation. But how did you actually come out? Like, what was the transformation part, that experience where you came out of being homeless?
When I enrolled in, we was homeless 2 years my undergrad before I went into college, and 2 years undergrad. So when
Wow.
I enrolled in college in 2007, we was living in a boarded up house as squatters. And so when I enrolled in college, I put the college at the time, Beulah Heights Bible College, back then it's university now. They had a family housing, and so I put my name on a waiting list, and it took 2 years for it to come available. And so that would broke the cycle of being homeless. But to be homeless that length of time, the mental shift that had to take place was almost just as unbearable as being homeless. Because now God is trying to get me to see myself the way He sees me. I've lived a defeated life all my life. I mean, dropping out of 10th grade, having 4 kids by 22. So I've always been someone that gave up easily or was easily swayed by people's opinions of me. So for me, it was the mental shift to see myself the way that right there is I think that was, and you gotta understand, being homeless, doors were shut. The rejection, oh my gosh. I just remember riding around in Atlanta and the kids are crying and they everybody talking about they tired. It was a summer day, summer evening, and they were like, "Where we gonna sleep?" I'm like, "I don't know, I don't know." And I heard a still small voice say, "Go to Berean Christian Bookstore on Cleveland Avenue." And I'm like, "What is there? What are you talking about?" And I heard the voice say it again. "Go there, your help is there." And coach, I went there and I walked into the store and I was drawn to this lady. God is my witness. I don't know if these people were angels. I walked to this lady and I told her what was going on. She said, "Well, hold on, ma'am." She went to her husband. She came back. She said, "Ma'am, do you have a car?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." Coach, for one night, these people invite us to their house. You would have thought we was out of town guests. She feasted for us and they loved on us. They were Christians. And when the next day she gave me $60 and they prayed for us. But for one night, she gave a weary mother a place to, and her children to lay their head.
Wow. Wow. I mean, that's touching. I mean, you having people that way, you know, and you going back to be that, letting those experiences take you back to go help other people that experience the things that you experience. I mean, God is just so good. You know, He's so good. And you know, and now that you have overcome all these tests and trials, I mean, where are you at now? Tell everybody what you're doing now, because I mean, I've looked at your story and I'm just like, this is amazing. You know.
Well, so I just give us, so within the last 12, 13 years, God has taken me from being homeless to run for city council in the 2017 election, from a GED to a doctorate in leadership studies. And I'm now a 14-time published author. And I released my first comic book last year. It's a Christian comic book. And as of last year, I was chosen and named by American Mothers Inc. as a national organization as Georgia and National Mother of the Year. Now, when I became National Mother of the Year, I made United States history as the 85th woman to ever hold that title.
Wow.
Only God can do that.
That's right. Yeah, only God can do that.
I'll go.
So, as an international speaker, you have, you know, you've traveled around the world. You've talked about your story. You know, where is it that you know, what do you really hit on when you talk to people when it comes to, you know, trying to get people to understand that they can come out of their situation?
Well, I haven't physically traveled. Last year I became an international speaker.
Okay.
When I was invited to speak to college students in India on the subject of leadership. But I've been interviewed all around the world, from Switzerland, Australia, St.
Nice.
Croix. Yeah, God is, I mean, you know, people from around the world have been contacting me. But I talk about leadership and parenting. So me being a servant leader, I definitely, because as a leader, we all could say we're leaders, but to me, until you have been tested and until you have stood without compromising who you are, can you actually say, it's easy to say you're a leader when you're on top, but can you be a leader when your back is against the wall? I didn't sell out when I was homeless. I didn't sleep around and get ahead. I didn't sleep around to make things better. I took it one day at a time. Even when I ran for city council and people was coming towards me who had connections, and you know, if we go out, I can do this. And no, I'm not going to start something that I know.
Right.
However you start something, you're going to have to keep that thing going to keep whatever you got from that.
Right. Yeah.
You know, yeah. So I knew that right there. But I do remember one time my undergrad professor told the class that the world belongs to those who are disciplined. So for me, I had to learn the art of being disciplined while being homeless. And so that's why I was able to manage, accomplish so much in the last 13, 14 years. I realized what was important. Coach, when we was homeless, I never saw a U-Haul following a funeral procession line. That let me know that nothing that we're striving for, it's all, to me, it's all an illusion. You know, it's this world is nothing wrong with having nice stuff. I mean, it's nothing wrong with it, as long as the nice stuff don't have you.
Right.
But we send when it don't care whether you're rich, poor, black, or white. When you die, you ain't taking them with you, but probably your best dress if it'll throw on you, and a good suit. And it lets, so I look at life differently. I chased purpose. I had to learn how to chase purpose and not perfection.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, that is like the essence of success, because I think that a lot of times we get so excited about what we can achieve, the different type of accolades, as well as the benefits that come with it. But at the end of the day, it's really about the purpose behind what you're doing. How do you feel when it's all accomplished, when it's over with, or how do you feel when you don't have any of it? So, but I want to go back a little bit, because you touched on that you did go through a divorce, and you that kind of led into you being homeless. Can you tell us, share the divorce? I mean, how that really transition into you having to really just take your kids by yourself and run and you know and try to raise them on your own, homeless. So,
Well, my ex-husband, when I met him, we was both in our early 20s. I was like 24, he might was 21. But the guy was talented. I mean, he's an electrician by trade, so he can wire up a building with his eyes closed.
wow.
And he started a self-contracting business. He was just that good, but he never got licensed. So he had always hired somebody or work upon somebody's license. And I used to always kind of give him a little advice on how to run his business. And he never took any. I guess he was like, what did she know? She got four kids at that time. I had two with him, but I had four kids and a GED. And so he came to me because he didn't have the business mindset. His business ended up going down. But he came to me one day and said, hey, won't you start a business in contracting? Um, because there's so many opportunities out there for women, and I'll support you. Well, coach, nobody never told me I had a choice. My family told me you don't have four kids, go get a McDonald's job and call it a day. So
Mm.
for me, I was like, are you serious? Do you think I can do this? Nobody never came to me like that. He said, if you fail, you fail. If you succeed, you succeed. It's all up to you. But when he put it that way, for the first time in my life, I felt empowered. Now I started this business that he directed me to start. The business took off. I mean, I was known as Lady Contractor. I mean, my first contract was Habitat for Humanity, but jealous set in.
Mm.
He started to be jealous. He started to show signs of jealousy, and I didn't understand. I went to him and I said, I don't understand. Why would you tell me to start something and you're going to be mad at me because I'm doing well? He said, it was really a joke. I wasn't expecting you to
Wow.
do as good. He said, how do you come into my field and outdo me? Well, coach, I ain't never been in this situation. I'm just going to keep it real. I'm not trying to sound doctorish.
Right.
I've never been in this situation.
Right.
Okay. I mean, he's asking, he's like, how do you do that? How do you, and I don't think, I'm like, well, you're an electrician. You know how many electricians it is? I'm an African-American woman known as Lady Contractor. Of course, I got more attention than he did, but he was my, um, he was head over the electrical department. I was still submissive. I was still whatever. And he told me he did not like it. And so I went to church. This was the beginning. I just started going to church a little bit. And I asked the older mothers, I said, well, I told him what was going on. I said, how do I make him feel secure? They told me, well, show him that you need him, because they never told me how far to take it. So I began to dumb myself down, acting like I'm
Right.
dumb. I'm shot, but I don't know how to read blueprints and I don't know how to do this. And my ex-husband said, don't do that. You're not already seen it. He said, I probably would have handled this better if you was like this when I met you.
Mm.
And he gave me an ultimatum. He said, if you want me and the marriage, you give up this business and go find a little job somewhere.
Mm.
For
Wow.
me, I coach for the first time in my life. I was getting my little wings. I didn't even get a chance. I mean, my first year in business, I did $60,000-$70,000 in contracts. I don't even know where I'll be at. I didn't know who I was. I was a young girl that fell in love with a young guy, and he's coming at me with stuff. I started to feel bad about who God was showing me who I was. So I started, and I said, why?
Mm.
Why do I have to do this? But so when he started verbally, emotionally, physically abused anything he could to beat whatever light he saw in me out.
Wow.
So when I gave up I just had two little kids with him. So of course, when he said, you make a decision. I gave up the business because I wanted my marriage. I didn't want to be. I had 2 extra little kids, and when I gave up the business, and he saw that he had emotionally and mentally beat me down, he left. I didn't know who I was. I was used to being rejected for doing bad, what people consider bad. I wasn't used to being rejected for doing well.
Wow.
So mentally, I was messed up. I was scared to try anything. I didn't want to come back out my shell. I really wanted to go in a corner somewhere and hide. So when we became homeless, that's why the mental shift was so hard for me, because I was almost pleading with God, don't do this. I don't want to see myself. I just want, you know what I'm saying? Because to be rejected for being successful, I didn't want to try nothing. I just wanted to go somewhere and curl up in a corner. But looking back now, had God not put me, I call it the crucible, term I learned my songs in the Marines. Had I not gone through the crucible and pushed for 4 years and kept going and pushing when people on my family, everybody laughing at me and nobody would help us, and it made me stronger to where, and now the way God see me, I wouldn't trade it. My relationship with him, I wouldn't trade it for nothing in the world. But that was probably the most painful thing that I ever had to experience. I didn't know who I was. What do you do when you're a young lady and your spouse tell you to do something, start something, and it gets successful? So for me, he started to ask me questions. How did you outdo me? He said, did you play me? I said, I never told you I was dumb. Maybe in his mind, he was thinking,
Right.
when I met her, she had 4 kids, and I said, who was to know? And I ended up getting a master's in business. So that was always, the gift was always there.
Yeah, payback is a blessing, right?
It is a blessing. It is a blessing.
So your kids now that they obviously know what you've been through in your your divorce and stuff like that. Are you having any kids that are married now?
Yeah, my 19-year-old just got married 6 months ago to a young man in the Army. And then 2 of my children, they are divorced. The older, my son, yeah, so 3 of them have been married, but one is currently married. She just, and I'm taught them to never give up who you are. It's okay to love your spouse. It's okay to submit to one another, but never give up who you are. Because when you give up your identity for somebody, I never do that one again. That was a lesson. That was one of them lessons you learn the hard way. If I get into another relationship, I never give up who God is calling me to be to satisfy another person.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that, because you are who he created you to be, and you have to be, people have to love you for yourself, and whether that's flaws, that's, the highlights, whatever the case may be, because that's true love, that's unconditional love. So I'm excited for what you shared. I think you really touched a lot of people, but I want to give people the opportunity to ask you some questions. I think that, there's probably some things that they got on their heart that they feel like you can help them with. So, the door is open if you guys like to ask Dr. Holden some questions, and Doctor, you're free to respond. So.
Okay. Yeah. Well, while they're thinking about they having a question, I do want to talk a little bit about that chase purpose and not perfection.
Yes.
A lot of times we wait to the opportunity. We feel when the opportunity is right. Had I waited for the perfect opportunity, I wouldn't accomplish anything. But I enrolled in college when we was living in that board-up house. But I remember, I realized it wasn't about trying to be perfect. It was about chasing purpose. Coach, when I started writing books, I didn't have no money to market. Nobody knew me. So what I would do, I just started to bet on myself. I didn't know, by the time 13 years was over, that journey, when I came out of it, I just had all this stuff. You know what I'm saying? I just had all this, I had all this stuff. I went from being an unknown woman 13 years ago. The only people knew me was to wear for office. Now I'm being interviewed all around the world. You can't tell. I'm not gonna give up my relationship. Only God, it wasn't a man, it wasn't a sister, brother, mama, dad. Nobody loved me like God. Nobody, no, you know what I'm saying? I was invisible. I would always get a prayer. I'm not crazy. There was no way. You can't. You take somebody from being homeless that nobody knows, they have no connections to anybody, and God just start to do things. And I mean, the awards I've received, the features in magazines, and God is using me now to evangelize by telling my story and talking about the goodness. Only God can do that.
Absolutely. We got a question here. It is, how'd you overcome fear?
Um, you know what? I think I just moved in spite of fear. When I kept going to school, when I enrolled in college and we was homeless, I was scared out my mind. You know, the last time, I mean, here I am, this homeless woman living in a boarded up house, going to turn in a college application at 35, and I haven't been in school since I was 15 years old. I just knew nobody was coming to save us. Nobody. I had to keep my 6 children from the school to prison pipeline, drugs and gangs, sex trafficking. We were such in a vulnerable situation where this could have went a whole different way. I just moved in fear. I got to a place, you know what? They talking about me anyway. I'm just gonna write a book. They talking about me anyway. I'm just gonna keep moving. I'm being laughed and talked about. And the more I kept moving and trusting God, the more doors He kept opening. The more I said, I put my blinders on. I didn't look to the runners to the right or to the left. I didn't care about what mom and daddy done said about me no more. I just kept going. And the more you keep going, and when you're feeling fearful, the stronger you become.
Man, that's awesome. I mean, shoot, this sounds like Testimony Tuesday back in church. You know, having that mindset. I mean, it's powerful. Because when you finally get to a place where nothing that anyone says matters anymore, you become dangerous. You become a fire that can't get put out. And that's what why I'm so excited that you shared your story, because you are proof that if you just keep going, if you just keep going and don't let all the sidebar things come your way and the people talking and try to divert you from your path, you can change the game. You literally changed the game. I was looking at the statistics the other day, and people that go through your situation specifically, most don't ever come out. Right? They get to a place of defeat, like you said, go get a McDonald's job and just struggle day by day, not knowing what to do. But you went through it all, from homelessness to being into observation for suicide, a divorce. How long did you say you were married for?
10 years. So for to be
10
married
years.
10
Wow.
years, and then I got two little, oh my gosh.
Wow.
And the crazy part about it, I started suffering from imposter syndrome, because God now is bringing me to the fort. God will hide you for a season,
Yep.
where he took me from where nobody knew me to now making history. God will hide you for a season. And so for me, I mean, I felt imposter. I felt like the imposter syndrome, because when I walked into rooms with other women, I was the non-traditionalist. I wasn't somebody that was on their job 30 years, that had the corporate titles and the big nice houses, the fat retirement accounts. I was just a homeless mother that took a chance against all odds to say, you know what, I'm just gonna bet on myself. I don't know what this gonna look like. When I ran for city council, I wasn't trying to impress nobody. I was just living out my heart and soul. When I started writing books, I wrote out my soul because I wanted to spread the same love to my 6 children to other people. So my 14 books are different genres. I wasn't writing. I didn't even worry about, well, what if it's not a New York bestseller? I didn't care. My thing was, Beyonce has a song out, say, I was here, meaning that when her time here is up, the world will know that she was here. And that's all I wanted. I didn't want to go to the grave full. So I just started writing. And so that's how my writing career started.
Awesome. That's awesome. Somebody actually wants to know where your book is at and how they can find it. So I'm gonna go ahead and let them know that they can visit your website here. It's drlatarjaholding.info. A lot of phenomenal content there, even more for the story, and some of the things that can help you overcome. Help you get through your storm.
I see
So
somebody said, how did I find a publisher? I learned how to self-publish. I learned how to self-publish. My first book, I did use a publisher, and that was close to $2,000. And I knew then it was no way I'll ever be able to write another book at that price. So I learned how to self-publish, and that's the thing. I was learning how to self-publish. All this stuff was behind the scenes. You
So
know, it was, it's interesting. I was to be able to move in who God is calling you when nobody know you is probably the hardest thing, because we all want cheerleaders. But I just started moving. I'm like, you know what? So I have 4 children's books. I have my life story out. I'm a community advocate, so I have a 4-part youth series that deal with sex trafficking, bullying, teen dating violence, and love and forgiveness. I have a leadership book out, a 60-page training workbook that I go back and do workshops on. My mini parenting guide just came out. So everything that I've experienced, I tried. So all of my books are for the whole family. You got the children books, you got the youth series for the middle school and beginner high school. You got my life story, you got the leadership book. So I tried to hit everybody in the family because I wanted to show love and compassion to people I may not be able to physically reach.
awesome. You know, somebody wants to know, you know, what advice do you have for parents going through the same situation?
Is it homelessness or divorce? I don't know which, because I want to answer correctly.
Well, you know, you can touch on both. I mean,
Well, if you're a parent going through divorce and you got children, you're scared, you don't know what to do. Um, I would say, you know what? Don't hold on to somebody that is not good for you just for the sake of kids. When you look back, it's a little funny. Now you know how you look back and you look at some of the people you dated and you be like, what was I thinking? Half of the time we be so in love with people that we can't see them for who they are. So a lot of time God cannot elevate you because the people that are attached to you are not attached to you for the right reasons.
yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
they're not, everybody, whether it's a spouse or a boyfriend, girlfriend, everybody's not attached to us for the right reasons. So if you're in that situation, it's going to be painful, but I guarantee you, I'm not talking something I read in a textbook. If you trust whoever your higher power is, if you trust him, will your stuff happen overnight? Now, God has the power to immediately, suddenly change your situation. He has the power to do that. But most times he takes us through the crucible that when we got to go on that potter wheel so he can just shave that stuff off of us that the world unattached, it's going to be painful. You might lose friends. But if you're a single mom and you about to face a vision of homeless, talk to your kids. Show your kids the raw emotion. My kids, show them the raw emotions. Because when kids see you being a human, you're not got to put on the front for nobody. When kids hear you, look, I'm sad, I'm depressed. That gives kids the ability to feel human when they get older. They don't have to put on fronts for nobody. They can be like, you know what, I'm not feeling good today. Just be real upfront with your children, what you're going through, and say, hey, we're a family and we're going to stick together and make this work.
Absolutely. I mean, I totally agree with that. I mean, you know, being able to show your kids those emotions, because when they don't see those things and they grow older, it's like they're trying to make sure that they can adjust who they are to make sure they're accepted by other people. So when they're bringing their problems out, they're trying to, you know, they're not as transparent. And when you're not transparent, you can't get the true help that you want. So yes, absolutely. I totally agree with that. Um, so I wanted to know, you know, through all the things that you overcome, you know, all the things that you have been able to do, and being able to see God in all those situations, even in retrospect.
Yeah.
Where do you see yourself at, let's say, in the next 5 to 10 years?
I would say mostly traveling, evangelizing. I say although I'm a speaker, I think God is using. I'm an ordained evangelist. For me, yeah, traveling the world, evangelizing. I'm telling my story and I'm talking about the goodness of God. Um, and I used to feel a little like God, even when I got ordained into ministry, I'm like, well, God, I don't yet. Most African American women that I saw in ministry, they yell and scream, and I don't do that. So I talk with love and compassion. Um, It's more of a softness. And I said, God, how can you use me? I don't have that persona. And he just said, be you. And I'm learning now to be unapologetically me. I'm a very soft, mild, meekly person, but there's power behind this. I tell people I came into this 13, 14 years ago when I was homeless as born in Fife. And I came out of the storm as the rock, and whoever's watching, it just came in my spirit. The reason why you're going through so much heck, I'm being nice with that word. The reason why you're going through so much heck, you are the generational curse breaker in your family.
Amen.
I had the opportunity to see my six, and I say opportunity because a lot of people don't have the opportunity to see their children grow up and become success. I don't take nothing for granted. I'm giving everything God allows me to witness is an opportunity. Not only that he's allowed me to see my children, but now my 9-year-old grandson became a published author last year before Christmas. So now I'm noticing mothers, fathers, whoever you are the generational curse breaker. That's why hell keep coming at you, the storms. You seem like, but if you give up, there's so many people that's tied to your breakthrough. There's so many people tied to your breakthrough that if you give up, somebody's gonna fall by the wayside. Had I given up, I don't know where my 6 children nor myself would be. I remember when I was running for city council in 2017, my son was stationed in Tennessee, and I was pulling in the driveway coming from a forum, and my son called me, and he sounded kind of serious on the phone. I said, "Son, is everything okay?" He said, "Mother, would you do me the honors of coming to Tennessee to pin me at my ceremony to Staff Sergeant Holden?" That phone call was probably one of the best phone calls, and I was dealing with this was a shock. I was like, "Son, why would you call me? I was the homeless mom. I didn't have anything." He said, "Mom, where would we have been if it wasn't for you?" He said, "You're a nice looking lady. You could have did anything. You could have started doing drugs, drinking. You could have gave us up. You could have stayed out." He said, "You did none of that stuff. And because of you, we're all where we're at in our own individual paths. Again, would you come and do me the honors?" And I tell you, it was at that point I realized they're watching. They're watching what you do in the times of adversity. You are your children's mentor and guide. They're watching you more than what you say. You could say one thing and do something different. You have just demolished anything that you was trying to get them to understand. And it was at that moment I realized they was watching me. Well, the only key that I possessed that I gave them was the key that led them to be successful leaders in their own path. And as a parent, whoever's watching, one thing I did, although when you're going through adversity, you really is just so much, but I still took the time to nurture my children individually according to who they are. I didn't say, well, your brother went to the Marines, everybody should go to. No. Once I saw their gifts, I loved to nurture them all through homelessness. I loved to nurture them according to who I saw them to be. But coach, the hardest thing about that was because it took a lot of more energy to do that, because you kind of wanted to group everybody together. Although I felt I was drowning mentally and emotionally because I didn't have nobody pouring into me, my job was to get everybody safely to shore. And I'm just honored that God allowed me to see that.
Wow. You said that that God had a plan for your life. When did you actually find out that he had a plan? I mean, what event occurred? Because sometimes we look at the things that we go through and we say, well, either God doesn't have a plan or he does has a plan, and we base it on our circumstances. So what event happened that you say, you know what, this must be God calling me to something greater?
I think when I started to celebrate the small steps. I even tell my 6 children, don't wait till the big shebang. We cannot take time for granted. A lot of times people don't get stuff done or move when God said move because you think you got all this time left. So for me, I started to celebrate after every semester that I completed. I didn't wait till I got bachelor and master's degrees. I celebrated, and each time I celebrated, I started to get a little sense that God might have something for me to do here on this
Mm.
earth. You know, each time he saw me get a little glimpse, and I've been in. Mm, I got newspaper articles that go back to 2008. He's had me some form to let me know I'm with you, daughter.
Wow.
Some form of media contact, some form of, oh, we heard that you used to be home, now you're a college student. Can we interview? And he was always just a little tap here, to just a little, you know. See, he's so loving when you allow him in the driver's seat, and you allow, it's almost like you're becoming a romance dance with him. You know, when you take a step, he take two, and this thing, you know, you're kind of doing a little. I don't force anything. And Atlanta now is like the new church, the new Hollywood. People tell I'm an introvert. I don't go everywhere. I'm very subjective to my energy. I'm always in deep meditation and prayer and reflection. And so I've learned to move with God. See, when you move in the world way, you're trying to be seen. Let God let you. When God do it, nobody can take it from you. Nobody, you know. And so I just learned how to move with God. I don't rush nothing. I'm not in competition with nobody. And whoever's watching, when you're being authentically you, there is no competition. Nobody can beat you at being you. So when you know, you don't have to worry about what God they doing this to, or you told me to start this business, 50 million people doing that. Nobody can beat you at being you. That's your weapon. That's your, you know. And so for me, nobody can beat me at being me. And so that's when I started my company last year, Phoenix Rising. Changing the narrative is the tagline, and it's a personal development and leadership company where I do trainings, speaking engagements, just speaking life into those who feel like, man, have God left me? Is this it with my life? So that's why you see the Phoenix there on the poster behind me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm excited that, just looking at the Phoenix and just thinking of just the name Phoenix Rising, changing the narrative. And, you're doing that through the darkest of the darkest, the hardest of the hardest things where people get. So listen, I'm super excited that you came on to share. I'm glad that you were so transparent and letting people know those little things that you don't really hear from some of the big, the more prominent speakers out there, because I think transparency is when you really start to touch people,
Yeah.
and I'm sure the audience and those who tune in were touched. And, I want you, if you can tell people, obviously you have your website up there, but just kind of give a little bit more detail about, what you can offer, and, what services you're providing to people, to the community, that they can reach out and get in touch with you about.
Yeah, thank you. All of my books are on Amazon. So, but if you want a signed copy, you can order from my website right there on the screen. If you order any of my books, I will send you out a copy of my limited edition comic book. And so, I'm proud of that. I I'm just living out loud. I never in my wildest dream would have thought I would have become a comic book creator. But it's my first, so it's a limited edition, but definitely an autographed copy. I'm a inspirational speaker. So I'm in Atlanta, Georgia. So if you have any engagements coming up that you're looking for a dynamic speaker, you can get in contact me. Even book me on my website, and my email address is also there. So if you're looking for an empowerment coach, I'm there. I'm not one of those people. I'm sorry. You have speakers and coaches telling you, some of the best speakers out there, if you don't get no sleep, and if you want to succeed, if you want to do this, and I'm like, y'all trying to stress the people out. I get 8 hours of sleep. I did when I was homeless, and I was able, but that's because I learned the power of discipline, being a disciplined person. So don't allow these people to tell you that if you don't, if you want it bad enough, you'll do everything on 4 hours and don't sleep, and take care of yourself. Don't let these people get y'all off track. Your body's all off track. When you're working with God and you're allowing God to lead your life, or whoever your higher power is, you don't have to do all that striving. One thing I learned, coach, striving is when you kind of pushing, you trying to I learned how to move in my being. When you move in your being, you're just being who you are. That light is going to naturally shine. You know, you don't have to strive to make nothing. When you with God, I don't have to do nothing to make Georgia National Mother of the Year. All the awards I received over the years because I just moved in my being. I wasn't trying to be seen. I was just doing what God told me to do that I felt in my spirit. And so, yeah, just thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming on board. And again, you guys can check Dr. Latarja Holding website out and see all the awesome content and books that she has available. I've been on there and it's definitely informative, and it's, book her for your next engagement, and, reach out to her if you want an empowerment coach, because she will definitely empower you in all areas of life. So, hey, appreciate everybody for tuning in and watching, and thank you, Dr. Holden, for coming on board and being a part of the premiere of Moving Mindset Mondays.
Awesome. And thank you for having me, Coach.
Absolutely.